I bet you thought maybe you'd get past this day without some tears, but no. Gonna take it right, just lay it out there first off. Get it over with, okay? So what I want to share with you is a reading that I found by Irma Bonbeck, who wrote about mothers. She was a humorist, and this is not all of that humorous. So this is Irma Bonbeck, When God Created Mothers. So let's not get all wound up about the whole God thing and God out there. Just be with me and know that God is everywhere present, even in this reading by Irma Bonbeck. Okay. When the good Lord was creating mothers, he was in his 6th day of overtime when the angel appeared and said, "You're doing a lot of fiddling around on this one." And God said, "Have you read the specs on this order? She has to be completely washable but not plastic, have 180 movable parts, all replaceable, run on black coffee and leftovers, have a laugh that disappears when she stands up, and a kiss that can cure anything from a broken leg to a disappointed love affair, and 6 pairs of hands." The angel shook her head slowly and said, 6 pairs of hands? No way. "And it's not the hands that are causing me problems," God remarked. "It's the 3 pairs of eyes that mothers have to have." "That's on the standard model?" asked the angel. God nodded. "1 pair that sees through the closed door when she asks, 'What are you kids doing in there?' when she already knows. Another here in the back of her head that sees what she shouldn't, but what she has to know. And of course the one in front that can look a child in the eye when he goofs up and says, 'I understand and I love you,' without so much as uttering a word." "Oh, God," the angel said, touching his sleeve gently, "get some rest tomorrow." "I can't," God said. "I'm so close to creating something so close to myself. Already I have one who heals herself when she's sick. She can feed a family of 6 on 1 pound of hamburger and can get a 9-year-old to stand under a shower." The angel circled the model of a mother very slowly. "It's too soft," she sighed. "But tough," God said excitedly. "You can imagine what this mother can do or endure. Can it think? Not only can it think, but it can reason and compromise," said the Creator. Finally, the angel bent down and ran her finger across the cheek. "There's a leak," she pronounced. "I told you that you were trying to put too much into that model." "It's not a leak," said the Lord. "It's a tear." "What's it for?" "It's for joy, sadness, disappointment, pain, loneliness, and pride." "You are a genius," said the angel. Soberly, God said, "I didn't put it there." I know, I almost got through the whole thing without a tear. So, what I wanted to talk about is that, some of us came with and received that perfect model that Irma Bonbeck talks about. Some of us get like the standard model. That's some perfect and some not so perfect. And some of us get the second basement model. We know that they are trying to do the very best that they can. But you know what? It's not so much about mothering. It is more about the alignment of generations. And we stand on the shoulders of the generations. And we are connected way back to when the Creator had the grand idea and the big explosion. We're all a product of that divine one. There's stands of aspen trees, I think, that really explains it more clearly than I can say. And that is that an aspen tree, or a stand of aspen, is a whole, complete, organic essence. There's a stand of aspens in Utah that are 80,000 years old. One organic whole. And it weighs 6,600 pounds or tons. It's one whole unit. So there's not an aspen tree. There's a stand of aspen that are interconnected with that same root system. And that's how we are all connected in our history and our humanness. Just like that one organic essence that we call aspen. You know, scientists have recently done studies, maybe not so recently now, about a DNA molecule. And you take a DNA molecule, if you're a scientist, and you spin it this way, and then you split it up, and then there's another one spinning, and they always change direction without any communication. They're connected by non-local communication. So if a DNA molecule is spinning this way, the connected DNA molecule is spinning the same direction. You change directions and they spin in unison. Non-local communication. You know, the Mormons talk about saving their ancestors and being saved for them on their behalf. And while maybe we don't talk about saving anybody, the point is that they believe that they have a connection with their ancestors in such a deep way that when they have faith, they can connect with their ancestors and have faith. I had the occasion of meeting with a shaman some time back, a Native American shaman, and that was a really enlightening experience to me. He was quite pedestrian appearing. He came to my office and he was wearing topsiders and dockers and a golf shirt. Not at all like you would expect a shaman to appear. There was no paint and no feathers and no rattles. And he came to my office and we talked. I was having some challenges and I don't even know how it happened that I decided I'd contact a shaman, but it seemed to work all right for me. So he came to my office and he asked this question. He said, "Tell me about your ancestors. Tell me about your ancestors." And I would ask that right now, this moment, you take a second and answer that question for yourself. think about your ancestors. What's their story? It's an interesting question, isn't it? And so, just to share my personal experience with the shaman, I did tell him about my ancestors, and I told him about my father's, this is what came to my mind. My father's family had moved from Oklahoma into Roy, New Mexico during the big, huge drought, during the Dust Bowl, in covered wagons. And they got to Roy, New Mexico, and I said to him, I think they just gave up. They couldn't go any farther. And he said, that's your lesson. You have come here to heal that. You've come here to clear your family's history, and therefore, the lesson is, you should never, ever, ever give up. I took that to heart. It sounded right. It sounded authentic. It sounded like the truth to me. So I'd ask you to think about your ancestors and what the message for you might be. What are you to do to carry on, to correct that history for yourself? It's an interesting question, isn't it? We do not come into this world as individual units. We come like a stand of aspen. We come connected with everyone else and with our ancestors. And so when we celebrate Mother's Day, we're not celebrating just that image of the sweet rock your cradle home to you mother, because a lot of us didn't have that. But what we celebrate is the gifts that come with our DNA, the gifts of family and history and connection and life. So even though we may have had the bummer of a mother, well, come on, it happens. Even though we had one of those standard models that struggled to be a mom, to do what was right, and fell short often, was very successful often, or even if we had like the deluxe model that knew what we were thinking before we bought it, which is what happened in my life. I've talked often about my mother, Tiger, who I am thoroughly convinced was an intuitive, because she always knew what I was up to, what I was getting ready to do, the trouble that I was starting to get into. But she wasn't a deluxe model. She was a standard model, like I am, like so many of us are, faulted, struggling, and yet we're connected on such a deep level. And I haven't talked about her mother too much. Oh my. Hetty R., whom I just loved amazingly, and oh my, she was a rugged old lady. And I'm connected to her. And her mother, who was a fiery French woman, apparently. And then to her mother, whom I don't know anything about. And yet, we're connected on that deep level of DNA. And so we all stand on our ancestors' shoulders. We're all connected. And just like roses that are never exactly the same, even though most of them are propagated by cuttings, and they have the same DNA, and yet life, it happens even to a rose bush. So a rose can share the same DNA with the mother plant, and weird stuff can happen. You can get different colors, and the bush can run amok. But still there is that connection. Oh, I'm going to use a cliche here. A rose by any other name is still a rose, right? A human by any other name is still a human. We're all connected. And if we go back far enough to the beginning of time, to the beginning of the Creator's idea, we share the same DNA. We share the same history. We share the same ancestry. We are all connected. We're like a stand of aspen. We're one. And we may be the oldest living organism. We may be the heaviest organism in the world, because we're all one. And we're not necessarily connected by our root system, but we're connected by our DNA, our genes, our Godness. They're doing more and more and more exploring, finding the God code. The beginning, the essence, the truth, the foundation of all humankind. They believe it's there, and they're very close. We don't need that scientific explanation. We know. We know we are all one. We know that we're all connected. We share the same foundation, the same roots of our humanness, our Godness, our love, our humanity. So, to me, that's what we celebrate for Mother's Day. It's the very root and the very foundation of our humanity. The cradle of our God essence that takes us back to the beginning of time, that takes us to the lesson that perhaps we have come here to learn. I don't know. All I know is that I make every effort to never, ever, ever, ever give up. Because that's what the shaman told me to do. That's my history. That's my connection to my ancestors. That's the lesson that I came here to teach and to learn. So, here we go. Before I moved here, I planted a cherry tree and put my mother's ashes in it and her dog, Gizmo. And I check back regularly to see how the tree is doing. And it seems to be flourishing. Dare it not with Tiger at the root of it all. It would have to. No other way. But I want to share in closing a Mark Napo reading from his book. It's an excerpt from his book, The 7,000 Ways to Listen. It says, this is the cherry tree of Willett Street. And Mark Napo says, for 3 glorious years I lived on Willett Street in Albany, New York, in an old brownstone at the edge of a beautiful park, which I could see year-round from my bay window. Across the street was a very old cherry tree, whose surprising blossoms burst for only a few days in early May. The first year, I called my friend Robert and my wife Susan, and we stood arm in arm beneath the tree, staring up into a swaying thicket of pink. Since it bloomed before everything else, the miracle of the flowers sprouting from wood was shouting quietly. From that day, I watched the cherry tree intensely, in awe, how quickly and easily it would let go of all its apparent beauty, as quickly gone as it had come. There were times in late fall or winter when I felt a sudden impossibility and a quick bereft. I would go out in the rain or snow and place my hands against the trunk as if asking for its counsel. And it always seemed to say in silence, neither the fullness nor the barrenness last. Neither the fullness nor the barrenness last. But we return. By the second spring, we anticipated the days of the blossom. At first sign, we gathered and read poems to the tree and to each other. After the second blossoming, I saw the tree's barrenness as a remarkable, enduring strength, knowing a softness would return and sprout from its woodiness. It became a guide. Susan and I now live in Michigan, but each spring, Robert goes in silence to stand beneath the thicket of the pink, and we call to hear how the tree has burst again to its fullness. We close our eyes as he tells us the story we want to hear. And we feel possibility all over. So that's what I bring to you for Mother's Day, the recollection of possibility. a reminder that if something is weighing heavy on your heart, if there is work for you yet to do that you do not feel up to, I would invite you to put a prayer request in and allow the practitioners to hold you, to know the truth for you, to clear that space for whatever you need to heal in your life. So join me as I turn within. As I anchor myself in the wisdom of the ages. The wisdom of the ages that dates back to the very beginning, the creation of it all, and the Creator who spoke the first word. I allow myself to be in alignment with that powerful, loving essence that knows before we ask. That is the Divine Mother, the Divine Father, the Divine God. That one that nurtures us mentally, physically, and spiritually. That whispers love, comfort, ease, gentleness, knowing that all I need to do is permit myself to sit in the silence and be aware of the truth. That there is only God, that one powerful essence, that source and force of all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be. And I know that as a chain in the link of life, I am an infinite connection. As I know for you and for me that the universe cannot be whole, perfect, and complete without you. You're the God connection, the God code, the God essence. It cannot be otherwise. And so I invite you to join with me as I step into my ancestral task of living love, of living peace, and never, ever, ever giving up. Because I absolutely know that everything I do, every thought I have, every step I take is in divine right order, in divine alignment with that essence. It cannot be otherwise. So I give thanks for it all. I give thanks for the perfection of it all. And I claim it is good beyond measure. It cannot be otherwise. And I invite you to join with me in acknowledging that truth by declaring it so and by saying, and so it is.